This is regarding my time spent on the Gorman Ranch, aka the Skinwalker Ranch, in the Uinta Basin in Utah from 2003 to 2005. I worked with a team from an independent company who was working with the National Institute of Discovery Science team that had already been there for a while. National Institute of Discovery Science is NIDS for short. Before I get into my experiences there, I should provide a backstory for those who are unfamiliar with the events surrounding this place. Just an FYI, many of the names will not be real names, as the majority of those involved wanted to remain anonymous. Back in the mid-90s, I believe it was 94 to 97, the Gorman family purchased a large ranch in the Uinta Basin in Utah in order to set up a ranch for their prized cattle. They had moved from out of state and brought their cattle with them. From day one on the ranch, they experienced several oddities that would eventually cause them to sell the ranch. On the first day there, as they were getting the first load of cattle in the pen, they saw a large wolf in the distance. This was strange because there really aren't wolves in that region. This was made all the stranger in that the wolf approached them and acted like a tame dog, even allowing them to pet it. Then, out of nowhere, the wolf lunged at one of the calves in the pen that stuck its head out between the bars. Tom Gorman, the father, grabbed his rifle and fired at the wolf. The wolf let the calf go and just stood there looking at the Gorman family before running away. Tom and his son tried to track the wolf, firing several more shots at it, but they lost it in the trees. They reported there was no blood at all, and the wolf didn't even act as though it had been hurt, even though Tom knew he hit him with at least the first shot. This was just their first day. As their time on the ranch progressed, the Gorman family would be forced to move out and reported several odd happenings. This included UFO sightings, strange noises and voices heard, both in the sky and underground, as well as cattle mutilation and the disappearances of their pets. As I said before, this occurred during the mid-90s. During this period of time, I was still in high school and didn't really know any of this crazy stuff was going on. I had a friend whose mother actually ran a paranormal investigation company. I had always been interested in that sort of thing, but I kind of remained skeptical about a lot of it. I had seen UFOs, and while I couldn't explain what I thought they were, I never really thought it was an alien or anything like that. Anyway, I started working with my friend's mother and her group my senior year in high school, which got me started researching paranormal events. Mostly we just went to ghost sightings and haunted places. I never really saw anything too crazy there, but I learned how to be objective in the face of what some thought was paranormal activity. Long story short, I kept in contact through college and eventually attended a big convention in the DC area with the group. This would be where I would meet a man who would later hire me to join his team on the ranch. Once hired, I would spend between a week and a month on the ranch and the surrounding areas, then have 2 weeks to a month off, and then return back with my team. I was there on and off from 2003 to 2005. Now, any of you who know much about the ranch know that by early 2000, most of the events had died down. There were no more missing animals, no crazy sounds, or weird monsters in the darkness. The NIDS team continued to monitor the ranch, but short of the occasional UFO sighting or strange ball of light off in the distance, there wasn't much to report. By the time I got there, which was August of 2003, it was like sitting on any old farm. We would just hang out, play cards, and monitor equipment for any magnetic anomalies. I remember one time on my second visit, I saw some lights in the sky in the distance, and I got really excited, but it turned out to be an airplane. So life went on like that for a while. I would go to the ranch or the surrounding areas, monitor the equipment, answer phones, feed the cattle and the dogs. A couple of times I just missed an event by a day or so. I would get to the ranch and some of the team members would tell me the night before I missed a flyby, which was their way of saying that I missed a UFO. After the fourth time going there, I had begun contemplating whether or not I wanted to keep doing this. I was just getting bored and the travel was getting to be a bit much. When I signed on, I had such high hopes. I didn't think that my job would amount to me being a glorified ranch hand. So as I mentioned, I was at the ranch, but I was not a member of the NIDS team. I was working with them. Once things started to die down at the ranch, the NIDS team pulled a lot of their members off. And they always had a few members on, but they also brought in outside teams as well. A lot of what went on there in the mid-2000s wasn't really reported on, because, with only a few exceptions, not much really went on. Anyway, on May 23rd, 2004, I finally had my first experience. Almost a year's worth of ranch work, and finally it paid off in quite a big way. It was a bit past dinner time, and we were sitting in the NIDS trailer. Outside, the dogs started to go nuts. I'd never heard them acting like that before, so I looked out my window and saw light being shined on the dog pen. I walked out with two of the other guys, and we saw a ball of light buzz by the dog pen and off through the field toward a line of trees. After a couple 100 yards, the ball curved in and flew off in a different direction and then just winked out. Just like that. My mind was blown. I had finally seen something worth noting. This was the first experience I had. It only lasted about 45 seconds, but it made everything up to that point worth it. A few days later on that same visit, I saw one of the fabled black triangles that had been seen a lot during the heyday of activity on the ranch. It was just after dusk, so the sky wasn't completely dark, and we got a call from one of the neighbors saying that they had seen a UFO and it was headed in our direction. We all were out looking at the sky, and in a very short amount of time, we saw a completely silent black triangle with one white light in the center. It didn't fly directly over us, but we did observe it flying over the property, and it flew off into the distance. It was completely silent. It wasn't as cool as the ball of light we saw, but it did show that there was something to all this UFO stuff. After that sighting, I wouldn't see anything again until early 2005. As I mentioned before, I left the ranch team in 2005, but I got luckier in 2005 than I did in the other year and a half that I was there. Nothing too crazy. I didn't see any monsters or get abducted or anything. But there was one experience that was just too much for me that happened toward the end of the summer in 2005. I'll get to that, but first I'll run down what else I experienced. February 12th, 2005. I remember it well because it was 2 days before Valentine's Day, and it was to be the first Valentine's Day that me and my then girlfriend would spend apart. This day was one of the most eventful days I spent on the ranch. It had been a typical day. I walked the grounds, fed the dogs, checked the fenced perimeter, and started to head back to the trailer. I decided I'd walk along the creek to get back. As I was walking, I happened to look down and there was a large, perfect circle cut out of the ice. I was told something similar happened before, but the last time it was a circle cut into the ice about half an inch. This time, all the ice in the circle was removed. There were no footprints on either side of the creek bed, and the ice wasn't cracked at all. Just a perfect circle taken out of the ice. Normally, I wouldn't have been bothered by something like this. I may not have even noticed, but because of all the other crazy stuff that had gone on here, I took note. But I didn't get too excited. I came back, let one of the NIDS guy know what I saw, and he went and checked it out, took some notes, and that was that. When I got back, I put my jacket on the back of a chair and put the keys to the dog pen on the desk, then sat down to eat some lunch. I was the only one in the trailer at this time, as the other guys were checking out the ice circle. About 20 minutes later, I heard some excited voices, and I went out to check what was up. The team was returning, but they were all looking up into the sky. As I looked up into the gray February sky, there was a solid black orb, or ball-shaped thing flying around. It was pretty high up, but it was doing aerial somersaults. We watched it for about 3 to 5 minutes before it just stopped, and it kind of faded away. Not really sure how else to describe it. So we were all excited about what we just saw and were obviously talking about it. The day wore on, and we were all abuzz with what had gone on earlier. As night started to fall, it was time to feed the dogs again. The keys to their pen were nowhere to be found though, even though I know I put them back where they always went, right on the desk, yet they were not there. We looked in the desk, under the desk, other places in the trailer. I even triple-checked all my pockets. Gone. So I offered to retrace my steps to find the keys, but I still couldn't find them. While I had been out, the rest of the team continued searching to no avail. I got back a little while later, and I walk into the trailer, only to find that the keys were exactly where I had left them. I thought it was a prank, but everyone was seriously surprised that they had been sitting on the desk in plain view, even though we were looking everywhere for them. Before going back into my story, I want to address the evidence questions. I know it's going to sound hard to believe, but whatever is behind this stuff does not want to leave evidence behind. At one point, the NIDS team set up 2 groups of video cameras on telephone poles. They had a camera that was angled so that it could see part of the field, as well as the other cameras. The wires on the cameras were torn out at one point, and the camera that was facing them had the whole thing on video, but there was nothing that could be seen. The feed on both cameras ended around 8 o'clock, so they reviewed the recording from the other camera to see if they could get a visual on what had done it, but nothing was on the tape at all. They tried to photograph UFOs and balls of light, but on film they just appeared as blurs. At one point, before I was there, a couple members of the NIDS team said they witnessed a portal opened up in the ground and something crawled out of it. They tried to take pictures, but all they got back was a picture of a dim orange light on the ground. Not exactly top-notch evidence. Someone did take a picture of the black triangle, but nothing substantial could be seen in the photo. For those who think I might be making this stuff up to avoid presenting evidence, do some research on the ranch. You'll see what I'm talking about. Even if we had photographic evidence though, do you really think they would have allowed me to bring it back? Since I wasn't a member of the NIDS team, I have no idea what was done with the photos, and the only photos I saw were really blurry. They were taken with a digital camera, and the only time I saw them were in viewing them on the camera screen. Even though I was there helping with the day-to-day stuff, I wasn't privy to what they were doing with the notes they took, or the pictures that were taken. A lot of the stuff that went down at the ranch, I heard from secondhand sources. At times it felt a lot like going to summer camp and sitting around a fire telling stories. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the stuff was being suppressed. What happened on the previously mentioned day was never reported, and what I'll explain happened later on while I was there was definitely never reported to any outside sources. I heard a lot of secondhand stories from the NIDS members that I have yet to read in print or on the internet anywhere. There's some seriously crazy stuff that happened there, even after NIDS arrived. Most of it occurred from 1999 to 2001. Okay, I suppose I'll wrap this thing up. Since nothing huge happened until I decided to leave, I'll just gloss over it. There are mostly strange sounds, dogs acting weird, and the occasional light in the distance. Nothing too strange happened until one night in mid-September 2005. In the trailer, it was just me and one of the NIDS guys. We were just sitting around playing cards. Suddenly, the air felt electrical. It's the only way I can put it. And at the exact same moment, the dogs outside started going nuts. But this time they sounded scared, with yelping and whining and the like. I got up from my seat to look out the window, but I didn't see anything. I looked over at my partner and he looked kind of dazed. I started to hear a sort of faint buzzing sound, and then it repeated itself. My partner kind of nodded and said we needed to go outside. So I followed him out of the trailer and he looked up into the sky. I also looked up and at first I didn't see anything. After scanning for a few seconds, I did notice a spot in the sky that was somehow darker than the sky itself. I couldn't make out an exact shape, but I could tell something was there. My partner was looking straight up at what I perceived to be the object in the sky. He told me he could hear it, but I didn't hear anything at all at this point. I'll never forget his face. It was almost a look of awe, but also kind of trance-like. After about a minute or two, there was a quick, bright flash of light in the sky. The electrical feeling in the air was gone, and so was the dark object. He turned to me and told me that they had spoken to him. This is going to be sort of hard for most of you to believe, and I wouldn't have believed it had I not been there. He told me, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't exactly remember word for word what he said, but he told me that they knew what we were doing there, and that they were doing the same thing, only our roles were reversed. He said that they told him that they have the advantage, and we cannot stop them from doing whatever they want to do. They also told him something like they were going back to work. I wish I could remember the way he worded it, though. It was really chilling. Had I not been present for that, I highly doubt I would have believed a word of it. But the look on his face, and the way he related to me what had been said to him, made me a true believer. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was terrified after that, and when the week was over, I decided I was going to leave the ranch and not go back. I know this sounds ridiculous, especially the last part, but it scared the hell out of me, and there's no doubt in my mind that this guy was for real. I heard that someone else had claimed that they heard them as well, but at the time I didn't really know whether or not to believe them. As soon as I witnessed this guy, though, I did believe. There's some seriously scary stuff out there, and the world is a lot bigger than we tend to think it is. Based on what I heard from others that had been there a long time, they seem to think that it's not aliens from outer space, but maybe something crossing over from another dimension. I was listening to one of the physicists talk about it one night over dinner, and he was explaining how two universes could overlap each other and take up the same space, and that sometimes the barrier between the two could be crossed. I really don't have much of a mind for science, so to be honest, a lot of what he was saying really went over my head. But I remember him talking about universes taking up the same space. As an example for those of us that weren't on his level, he put two pieces of paper together to represent the two universes and then punched a hole in one of them so that the other paper was visible. The hole represented a breach in the barrier between the two universes. He also talked about how he didn't think they were from outer space because of how difficult space travel is. I kind of agree with that. I just don't think that something would travel through outer space just to mess with people and kill their animals. I can understand that maybe the breach in the two universes is only in that region, so that is why there is activity in and around the area. It's a matter of convenience for them, maybe. I don't know what to think about it, though. I'm also kind of wondering about the Bigfoot sightings in the area and the poltergeist activity that was reported to take place on the ranch.